Today we're going to look at pure illusory body. So we talked about impure illusory body, and we also looked at the Four Blisses. We did dream yoga as a support for all of that. And so we began to see appearances as illusory, like a dream. It's like this is just a different form of a dream, if you will. And so they appear kind of like reflections in a mirror is one analogy. It's look at a reflection in a mirror and it appears to be real, and yet you know that it's not. It just has that appearance. Well, when you do this, you begin to realize that everything that we're seeing now appears to be real, but it's not either. And you can look at that either from a scientific point of view, or you can look at it from a Buddhist point of view. The effect is the same, and that is that everything that we are experiencing actually takes place in our mind. Now, it may be out there, but we know from a scientific point of view it's not the way it appears to be out there, because we can't see atoms, we can't see subatomic particles and so forth. And we know that, for example, if you took all of the human beings, 6 billion plus human beings in the world, and put them together, compressed all of the space out between the particles, you could fit them into a thimble. A very heavy thimble, but a thimble nevertheless. If you took all the human beings on planet Earth, compressed out all of the space that's in between the electrons and neutrons and subatomic particles, compressed it down, it would fit in a thimble. That's how much empty space there is. But it looks to us like it's solid. It's not. Not even close. It's almost completely transparent if you think about what's actually there. So the fact is that this is all very illusory in many different ways. From a Buddhist point of view, of course, that's not what the Buddhists are talking about, but we're talking about it in terms of mind. In terms of our mind, it appears to be real, but that experience is actually happening in our mind. When we see something, we look out there, and there's photons that come into our eyeball that then get transmitted into our optic nerve that goes to the occipital lobe in the brain, and it creates this image that we think is out there. Okay? It's actually taking place in your mind as a result of something going on in your brain. Okay? So it's all an illusion, very much an illusion. That doesn't mean it looks different, but it is an illusion. Another analogy is like an artist. An artist looking at the world sees things very differently. Everything looks like art. Okay? And the same would be for, say, a theoretical physicist. They would look at things and see everything in terms of those subatomic particles and so forth. All right? As a Buddhist, that's also true. We see everything as a Buddhist sees things. Everything is like a dream. So it changes the way you look at things. And that is what this is all about. So in here, Padmasambhava gives some examples, and he talks about looking at a picture of Vajrasattva or another deity through a crystal. You see multiple images that all look real, but they're illusory, and then you can meditate on that. So, for example, here is a picture of Padmasambhava with Vajrasattva, or not Padmasambhava, excuse me, Vajrasattva and Vajratopa, his consort, together. And I brought this. It's not a prism, but it has a very similar effect. I just bought this yesterday. I thought it was pretty cool. It's like little magnifying glasses, but if you hold it up, and I know the people watching on the video can't see this, but it creates a whole bunch of different images as you look through it. Mm-hmm. And so if you put Padmasambhava or Vajrasattva there,
it looks like a lot of little pixels.
Pictures. Well, they're miniature pictures. You can see the whole thing in each one.
Put on glasses. Yeah.
So which one is real? We know there's only one. Looks like a whole bunch.
Can I see with the glasses? Oh, see all the faces.
Yeah.
All the faces.
Yeah. See, so it appears to be real, but we know there's only one, so they can't be real. They're an illusion. Okay, and so that's one of the things. Another thing is, he says, to dissolve that image into your body, and then the yidam is pure illusory body. If you think about that, so in this case, the yidam is Vajrasattva. So whatever yidam you happen to be working with, if you dissolve that when we're doing generation stage practice, we dissolve the yidam into our body. So when we do that, this image dissolves into our body. That is a pure illusory body. Okay?
What is it?
So the dissolution of that image into our body, that represents a pure illusory body. And so then we meditate on our own body as being a pure illusory body. Okay, so those are a couple of the suggestions. So you focus on this illusory experience between meditations, then. Okay, that all of this is illusory. So I wanted to read to you the section here from Padmasambhava. And it's just a short section here on page 148. He says, cultivate the spirit of awakening as you did before. The spirit of awakening, of course, is bodhicitta. And position your body in the cross-legged posture. The spiritual mentor should sit upon a throne adorned with the garb of Vajrasattva. The students should hold a crystal up to their eyes and look at the body of Vajrasattva. By doing so, the body of Vajrasattva, composed of the 5 kinds of rainbow light, will appear in 2, 3, or more places. Meditate on that glorious body which appears but is without an inherent nature as your mental object. This is the 4th session. So just as I described, you're looking at it and looks real, but in fact it is not actually real. And then he goes on and says, then let that divine body, a body that appears but is without inherent nature, clearly arise as your own mental object. Imagine it dissolving into your own body, and clearly imagine your own body being like that. When you meditate and train yourself in seeing the whole of the animate and inanimate world as being like that, you are adept at the practice of pure body. During the transitional process, the bardos, when the peaceful and wrathful bodies appear, you will surely be liberated. In other words, this is a practice that helps us prepare for the bardos in addition to helping us potentially become enlightened in this lifetime. Thus, the main part of the practice of the transitional process of living, the bardo of this life, is just this: the preliminary practice for the transitional process of dreaming and of reality itself depends on this alone. So here he's talking about dreaming as being the bardo of the dream, and then also the reality itself is dharmadhatu, so the bardo of dharmadhatu that happens right after you die. So all of this is preparation for those experiences. So strive in this most diligently. In addition, the impure illusory body is crucial to the preliminary practice of the transitional process of becoming. So after the bardo of dharmata, then we go into the bardo of becoming. And so again, this is very important preparation for that experience. So both of these illusory bodies are main practices of the transitional process. This is the natural liberation of the appearances through the instructions on the illusory body, samaya.
Okay.
So our main practice here for this is the Four Empties. And there are lots of variations in all of these practices, and this is no exception to that. But we've been following these incremental steps, little steps in how we get to pure illusory body. And so this is the next step in that sequence of things that we've been talking about. And so the idea here is that as quickly as we can, we want to get to pure illusory body and the experience of the actual clear light, which will be the next one that we look at and have a practice related to. And so here we're talking about the direct experience of, well, we did the Four Blisses, and then from that, we get the union of bliss and emptiness, the next stage. And so what we're doing here is the Four Empties, and then you can put those two practices together. So the first part of the practice is the Four Blisses, and then the second part of the practice is the Four Empties. In fact, you can do it so that on the coming up, for example, the in-breath, you do the increasing blisses, and on the out-breath, you do the increasing empties. So that's a way to combine it together. But looking at the practice here, again, we set our intention, and then we do the preliminary practices, the nundro, and the purification of our breath, the 9-round breathing as before, and then the Four Empties. So first, from emptiness, visualize yourself as Vajrayogini or another deity with consort, and you're transparent like a crystal. So you're kind of in a rainbow body form, transparent. From the tip of the jewel, the ascending Four Blisses are aroused as the melted red drop at the navel chakra as it ascends on the winds to the crown. And then the melted white drop descends with emptiness at the crown chakra, great emptiness at the throat chakra, extreme emptiness at the heart chakra, and total emptiness at the navel chakra. And then at the tip of the jewel, we have the union of bliss and emptiness together. So on the up, we're doing the Four Blisses as we did before, and on the down, then it's changed into the Four Emptiness, and at the bottom, then those two are united together. And so then we repeat that as many times as necessary to achieve the actual experience of bliss and emptiness together. And then once we've done that practice, then we just rest in the natural state, and then we dedicate the merit of that. And then in post-meditation, we follow the practice by continuing this idea of union of bliss and emptiness as much as you can during your daily activities, reminding yourself that you are Vajrayogini or whatever deity that you are using as your main deity practice. And so what has been found is that alternating between bliss, the practice of bliss, and the practice of emptiness is a very effective way of achieving the union of those two together. So if you just start out doing the bliss, you can do the bliss up and down a few times, and then do the emptiness, and you can do the emptiness both up and down. The way it's described here, you're combining it, so you're doing the bliss up and the empties down. But you can do, just like the Four Blisses, you can do the empties on the way up and then the empties on the way down. But the idea is to alternate. And so alternating going up and then alternating going down can be a very effective way of putting those together to get that sensation of the union of those two together. If you happen to be doing this, we've talked a little bit about this, we'll talk more about it next time, with the Karma Mudra, an actual consort, then in that case it's very important that you abide in stillness. There's no movement when you're doing this practice, particularly on the empties part, so you just allow that inner fire of sexual arousal to just gradually melt into that state of emptiness, kind of innate happiness sensation that comes from that. And the Four Blisses and Four Empties then get combined into a single practice. And we experience that bliss, that transcendent bliss. It's not a sexual bliss, but a transcendent bliss that we experience at that level. To reinforce this experience of initially it's still an impure illusory body, and so as we do this practice, we gradually become the pure illusory body. Padmasambhava describes some additional practices for body, speech, and mind. One, these are similar to what we've looked at before. The first one for the body, he says to look into the mirror and then praise its good qualities, and then switch to blaming in the bad qualities, and then realize that both are an illusion and neither one is either good or bad, and then without any attachment or aversion. For speech, the echo, and realizing that neither one of those are either good or bad. It's just an illusion. And then for mind, the thoughts are like a dream. They lack any solid existence, and they're the creation of the mind, and so they are also illusory. And so we apply these understandings to body, speech, and mind, everything we think, say, and do. And all of that is an illusory experience. So it's just how we perceive it in our mind as being real, but it's not. And so during the illusory practice with the Four Empties, you begin to experience also a sense of clear light, which is the approximate or semblant clear light that we will talk about when we get to that shortly. And that is none other than our own true nature, our own Buddha nature, Dharmakaya.